People walk days to get here, as far as 20 miles, which in the mountains, when you're sick or walking with children, takes a long time. In Mayan mythology, the hummingbird stands for refuge or looking out for you. The hummingbird looked out for the young king. And so I just thought we would call it House of the Hummingbird, Casa Colibri, because it's a place of refuge. We're looking out for people, but not in a patronizing way. More like this is a place you can come and find help. Casa Colibri is a medical clinic in the Huehuetenango province of northwest Guatemala, about 5.5 miles from the border of Mexico. We got involved with Casa Colibri before it was Casa Colibri. We got involved in Guatemala in 2001.
I'm a Rotarian, and a fellow Rotarian came to our club and said that she needed a medical needs assessment in the area.
My husband said, yeah, I'd love to go, I can do that. And then the person that wanted him to go said, well, now we need a Spanish translator, and I happen to speak Spanish. And so he came home and asked me, not knowing if I'd say yes or no, and I said, I'd love to, that sounds like fun, an adventure. It turned out to be life-changing, obviously. There was another gentleman on that trip, a Guatemalan, who also came as a translator, and we were absolutely blessed to have met right from the start.
Getting involved in this project started 18 years ago. Back then, I was working in the tourism industry, and one has no idea really that these kinds of circumstances exist when you live in the city.
They were a really victimized population, and they fled from these areas during the worst of the war. Then when the peace accords were signed, they slowly made their way back, but basically they had to start completely over. That's why we're in such a remote place, because this is where they came to rebuild from absolutely nothing.
It takes a day to fly to Guatemala and drive 6 hours to where we spend the night, and then another 6 hours in the morning to get to this area.
They had so many needs, not only medical needs, but needs in the area of schooling and literacy, needs in the area of clean water and sanitation.
We stayed in a school the first night, and I use the term lightly because there was nothing in that building that would say that it was a school. There was no books, there were no notebooks, papers, nothing. And I happened to ask the teacher, what do you use to teach reading? You don't have any books, you don't have any newspapers, you don't have any written words. And he just basically said, we do the best we can. I looked around at the people and looked at their faces, and I was just overcome. I was overwhelmed with what I felt was expected, and I kind of bolted out of the room and went behind the building and just sobbed, because it was like, I'm only one person. I can't do this. Being a school teacher, I thought, well, I could get some books, and it was easy. It was easy. People want to help. We knocked on a couple of doors. We asked a couple people. We were able to put a small library in that far, far remote place. And of course, once you put a library in one school, word gets out, and we had a couple more requests. And then just by telling our story, more and more people just wanted to help. And that's really how we came to this point.
When we first came here, really what we saw was what is now called extreme poverty. Since then, people have been able to climb out of extreme poverty, not to middle class, but have started to improve their lives.
Our primary areas of focus are disease prevention and treatment, basic literacy, education is the second one. And the third one is infrastructure, which for us that means clean water and sanitation. One thing that we have focused on quite heavily is improving the maternal and infant death rate in this area. when we did our needs assessment, the official numbers were as high as 50% infant death and 25% maternal in childbirth.
It's harder than what we're used to as pregnancy. I mean, most women have multiple children, and they'll have one in their belly and then they'll have one on their back, and they'll be working all day and they're carrying around and making babies in addition to cooking, cleaning, some of them work in the fields. If they're not having a healthy pregnancy, no one knows. And if, for example, they have diabetes, they have a very large baby, and if they didn't monitor their diet with that, then they could have delivery complications. And the closest hospital is a 3-hour drive away. Coming in, we do fetal heart tones for them. We check their blood pressure and just make sure they're having a healthy pregnancy. One of the things that they take away with them is vitamins, because their diet is lacking a lot of things that they need to produce a healthy child.
One of the things I'm most proud of is that we took a Mayan man who lives in this area, speaks this Mayan language, Canjobal, and we sent him to university for 4 years to be a nurse practitioner so that he could come back to this clinic and provide medical care every day.
Man asan tolchu atender ani ma hun kuya tok ya ilal ma maxil chi haye kok baitel chi abula qismi manil sino que también chi el kasto hun aldeas tanto ashka lieto hun en carro hun chi clínica sobre ruedas chihil to bish ish ayok yalan unin bish iqal el ish chihil to het hanta kaush nakhil chek do yiban isqina le bish yuh unin wal aych kan yalan unin shiwi shatzetal chihey to yiban ismi manile bish yet cuando shkan yalan unin entonces yo walich illa te junto como hohtaq bay juntan lugar bay kahano nekti am maxil chilon de bishin yila te juntan kaush nakhil tu shiwi shatzetal chihey to yiban bish tanto ashka sheye hunok ilia chi hayiban bish man asan tor ay kip yalan unin.
He can flag potential catastrophes in childbirth and make arrangements to get those women to a hospital, which is considerably far away, and it has made a big impact on maternal and infant death.
Having access to care to the women, and it's not just the pregnant women, because I see lots of women. Sometimes I think it's just they know that someone cares about them, and they just want someone to listen to what they have to say.
As much as the medicine we offer, the caring, compassion, and concern counts too, maybe even more than the medicine. Another part of healthcare that we've been able to expand dramatically is eye care.
It's such an amazing thing to watch somebody put on their first pair of glasses. Giving people the opportunity to see is amazing, because if they can't see, they can't walk. If they're a young adult or a medium-aged adult and they lose their vision and they can't see, they lose their job in this area. They become an instant burden on their family and their culture. Giving these people the ability to see allows more opportunity for them to take care of themselves and eventually solve some of the limits that they have here. You know, for the children, that opens the whole world. If a child can see in school, they can learn in school.
The original school for Nuevo Eden, when they established this village, looked something like this. Corrugated steel roofs, boards on the sides. The original schools had no concrete floor, they had no lighting, no power. Today the school looks like this. This is a single classroom school. What they will do normally is they will place the children in rows by grades. So the teacher will pretty much teach six grades in one morning. Despite the fact that it's something that is very rustic, children enjoy enormously coming to school every morning and getting the opportunity to get educated. We believe in improving education because this is the key factor for people to break out of the poverty cycle. Education, health, and any infrastructure related to both of those bigger programs.
I think the general state of health is better. People are being educated in how important hygiene is, how important good nutrition is. We're working on that. I mean, it's a work in progress. A lot of times I've seen a lot of kids have every tooth in their mouth pulled out.
We pull teeth, we pull lots and lots and lots and lots of teeth. because there are serious issues with water safety. You have to boil the water at a rolling boil for 20 minutes to make it safe, but when you have, a family of 12, it's difficult. And not to mention that for a large part of the year there's no water source here, so they have to go down to the river. They know it, but the reality of giving people nothing but water all the time is difficult, especially when the food and beverage industry started, trucking up here these low-price snacks and, and drinks and all of that, but they're high sugar, high acid, and it's just taking a huge toll on the teeth and a huge toll nutritionally. And if all you eat is beans and rice and beans and rice and beans and rice, and maybe once every month or two you get a little bit of chicken, well, that orange pop tastes fantastic.
Capaz hay día que kaiti yustol chi wa ayudare chin trahilisiem y chin colone wa estos anehal yin kanjobal kalin español. Objetivo ma hunis meta epti tol chi yi elapnok bay hantach anima kaham bay hun comunidad ti yustol chi yoche heptol watch tol ay watch hun sa unintuk am chi ahya ilye Yuhtol yin sha abilal yuhun abil chi hay unin kaiti asha hunsa unin chi hay kaiti hantak anima icham ache chutre hunsan sha chi hayep kaiti is objetivo epti yuhtol am chi ahya ilyeb yuhtol watch kal isyeb chi ay masani abil am chi ahya ilyeb.
I was a pretty self-centered person when I first came here, and it's made me understand what it is to relate to the rest of the world. And I just love it, and I've loved to involve other people in that process.
Getting involved made a difference in my life, and with that, we're capable of making differences for other people's lives.
But sometimes it's the Mayans who make the difference in their example of resilience and their joy and simplicity. People find their pleasure in very, very simple things. You get a soccer ball out and suddenly you've got 20 kids kicking it around, and if it's not a soccer ball, they find a balloon. It can be anything. At home, you got to have uniforms and a coach and a league and referees and that kind of stuff. It's so much different. It almost defies description.
The people here are just incredibly loving. I took like an hour to walk here the first time I was here. Got to stop, meet people. I couldn't speak their language except for the smiles and the hugs. And it was just amazing, comforting, wonderful thing to be here. I join in other missions around the world and stuff. I've got my heart here in Casa, Colibri. I'm actively involved in depths beyond just the eye clinic. I guess the best way to describe it is I go home now after these missions, and people often hear about how poor the people are here. And they say, aren't you just so glad when you get home about all the things you have? And I'm like, not really, not really. I'm actually a bit jealous when I get home of the things these people have that we don't have anymore. The love of their family, the love of their culture, the love of each other. And I feel that, I absorb that when I'm here.
Most people can't find Guatemala on a map before they come here. I lived as a teenager in North Africa, so my assumption, I always knew I'd go and do international work. My assumption was always that I would go back there because, I was decent with the language, I knew the area. Then I just kept coming back here. For 3 or 4 years here in the dental clinic, I was the only American. It seemed like it was the right thing because it's their country and I was here to help out, but I liked that I was working with all Guatemalans. And I've liked how I've seen over the years the Mayan people that we work with more and more become, empowered. And you can see a lot of the difference now between the people who are in their 40s and 50s that live most of their life in the Civil War, and they're tiny, they're frail. A lot of times their health is terrible. Some of them are really psychologically scarred. And then it's great to see the generation that was born after the war, and they're totally different people. When I first started coming here, people they'd shuffle in, they'd have their heads down, but they would never look up in our faces. Now, most people look up, and people are starting to complain, and I think that's progress because they're able to identify now, this is a problem, and I want to speak up about it. And I think that's a lot of what Casa Colibri is doing, is empowering the people.
Well, my long-term hope has always been that someday we would hand it over to the Guatemalan people themselves. And we're making real progress in that direction. Our executive director is Guatemalan. A lot of our volunteers are Guatemalan. Our employees are all Guatemalan. We have our nurse practitioner and our caretaker of the property and the building. And someday, with help and with teaching and nurturing, and that's my vision, is to turn it over to the Guatemalan people and let this be their project. And so I'll go back to that scene on the first day here when I was so overwhelmed, crying behind the school building. We had a fellow on our team that came with us that found me, and he knew why I had bolted out. And he said, think of it this way, you can't do everything, but you can do something. We can do something. And think of what you can do as a person, as one person. And like Mother Teresa said, the ocean is made up of drops. And so you can do a drop or two or three.
There are still people that need help. It is getting better, there's no question about that, but there are still lots of people in extreme poverty who do need help, and we should always think of them, especially when we have so much.
What can I say? This is probably the best thing that's ever happened to my life, and reorients everything. So yeah, this is Nuevo Eden. It literally means New Eden. This is where we are in the middle of the rainforest in Guatemala. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Thanks.